Welcome back to another episode of Black Law and Legalize. I am one of your hosts, Afro Becky.
Retarded titty Becky.
We'll tell
Yeah,
the
it's
viewers
gonna be
where
If this is the first episode,
Yeah.
nah, bro.
It's an inside joke.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think we should start over.
No, we
Yes.
don't do that.
Yes, we do.
My name is Dan, ladies and gentlemen, and I am one of your hosts. You can keep up with me on Twitter and on IG at I am Dan on Drugs. Keep up with the show across all social media platforms at Black Law Podcast. Check out our shop. It's hoodie season. We got hoodies. Check it out. blacklawpodcast.com/shop.
And my name is Ann, and you can follow me on Twitter at I Tell Legal Lies. Welcome to the show.
Show.
Really, I don't need-
Yo.
No.
Okay.
Sound effects.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna try to get straight to the point today and keep you guys entertained and informed. So, with the influx of people buying these, well, y'all gentrifiers too, fuck y'all. But with the influx of people buying homes, fixing them up, and either renting or selling them, wanted to talk about some things to look out for being a landlord.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people, I'm sure a lot of our listeners are accustomed to signing leases, apartment complex. You typically run your application, pay an application fee. Some of them do background checks.
Yep.
Some of them do credit checks.
Yep.
Some of them do race checks.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they'll
Yes,
check your ethnicity.
Even though
Not supposed
that
to.
is highly illegal.
They'll do
Because
it.
of HUD.
What?
Because of HUD.
Oh, I thought you said the hood.
No.
Oh, I was about to say, cause the hood.
Highly illegal, yet it is something that is still very prevalent.
And if you
As
look at
we
the
all know.
names, you look at people's names, like, honestly,
Yeah, when we did our show about resumes,
yeah.
same
it's-
thing.
You
I
can
mean,
look.
We have this kid, I kid you not, y'all can look it up. He is from Shreveport, Louisiana, and his official government name
He ain't the hottest.
on his birth certificate
He ain't the
is
warmest.
the
The
coldest.
coldest.
That is his first name. That ever was is his middle name.
Wait, I didn't even know the nigga had a middle name.
Yes, the coldest is his first.
Wait, that ever
was
is
Is
a
his middle name. Yes.
Man.
And he plays football.
He better.
And
Shit.
he better be the coldest mother on the field. His mama set him up.
Man, with a name like that.
His mama set him up.
Shit, you remember the XFL
Yeah.
and how it lasted for like a year?
Mhm.
Like the dude, what's his name? He Hate Me was on there. Wait, what we doing over there? Sudden
She
movement?
was silencing.
Okay, that wasn't Panera about the food, was it?
Possibly.
What the fuck are you doing?
We're recording a show.
Yo, they about to show up here and the order gonna be fucking wrong? Man, the fuck?
Fine, I'll call him back.
Call him back.
Okay.
And it was like, fuck this show. It's my food order.
Hold up. Fucking up the food and shit. Man. The food we ordered can wait. We're
Lord
recording.
Have mercy.
Man.
Wait, are we still on?
Yes, we're still on.
We're still
Yeah.
rolling. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, so what happened prior to the show? We ordered Panera, and Panera called Becky, and what Becky did was silence her phone because she's had a couple of edibles.
No, because we're in the middle of a show, and that's what we do. The show above all, but apparently
Shit.
not the show above food.
That girl silenced her phone and put it down. And I just put two and two together. We just ordered Panera. Your phone's ringing. Was that Panera? Possibly. damn phone. Shit. So, yeah, the coldest, man. You can look at names and tell a
Well,
lot of the time.
right. About 90% of the time you can look at a name and tell, and yes, we know that housing discrimination does exist, as with any sort of other discrimination, gender
Mhm.
discrimination, race discrimination for the
Right.
most part. But yeah, so we are going to talk about the things that you should and should not have in a lease
Now,
agreement.
let's start with some of the things that I would think of as a homeowner if I was renting my house out, right? This might sound crazy, but I would want to do inspections. And when I say inspections, I want to come every so often to visibly inspect my property, both inside and out, to make sure you ain't dirty, you ain't nasty. And I
Well,
know
in
you're
your
not supposed I think you're not supposed to be able to do that. Like,
no, that's false. In a lot of um lease agreements, but you have to put it in there. And for the most part, there are sections that include when the landlord can and cannot come to the property and how they can go into the property whether you're there or not. But you have to specify when you can do that and how it can happen. So most of the time, I know in the leases that I actually put together, I talk about inspections. I
mhm.
actually have a clause that talks about the landlord's ability to come into the unit or the house or whatever and inspect, and for maintenance reasons, but you have to give the person a certain amount of heads up.
See,
You have
but
to
that's all they're gonna do is try to clean the shit up, and that's
well,
what I
that's what you
don't
want them
want.
to do anyway.
Well, you want them to keep it clean. You don't want them to be dirty for 30 days, and then on the 31st day you say, "Hey, yo, I'm gonna be there in 3 days." They hurry up and try to
But
do a
that's where damage deposits, because that's something else that you want to include. Security deposits.
right.
And included in that security deposit is enough so that you can cover damages that they might do to the property. Normal wear and tear not included,
And
but
that's some shit too that I see a lot of people try to claim. Oh, normal wear and tear on the floors, normal wear and tear on this, that, and the
right,
other.
but there's a standard for what is normal wear and tear. If there's a hole
That's not
in the
normal.
floor
Hmm.
or a hole in the wall, that is not normal wear and tear. But if you have shag carpeting, even though nobody should have shag carpeting anymore, and this person is in this house for a year,
Hmm.
and of course they've tread upon the carpet,
Right.
multiple times, the pile gets matted,
Yeah. You're gonna
stuff.
have a walkway basically.
Right. So, I mean, that's normal, because unless you're not moving around or you're floating off the ground, normal wear and tear. But
So with visual inspection, so in a lease now, right now, ladies and gentlemen, we're putting together a lease for my property. And so the first thing I want to be able to come and inspect my property to make sure the people aren't dirty, nasty, because we share a mutual friend who has a rental property. Shout out to K Man. He a superhero out here.
Mhm.
Um, he one day went to go replace a part under the sink, and he got down on his hands and knees and slid about half a foot because there was this
Grease.
much grease piled up on the floor, cooking grease. And then he also found dead rodents and all kinds of stuff. A rodent had died inside of the stove, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
So shit like that. Now, K Man is very anal. He's a lot like me as far as certain traits go. He's very anal, attention to detail, and
Mm-hmm.
K Man is not gonna have rats, roaches, or grease on his floors. So his tenants are the ones that bought that in. So I'm like, can't you kick him out? And according to K-Man, he cannot. So I would want something to say, I can kick you out if I find you dirty. I don't care what your definition of clean is. If I find you dirty, I want you gone.
All right. So here's the thing about things like that. Okay. Now, you can put, I want to say anything you want, because you can contract for a lot of stuff as long as it's not illegal. But courts also have a lot of leeway when it comes to evictions. Even if they're not paying rent, a court can say, okay, you have to putting into the registry of the court a certain amount of money, and then they will allow you to continue to rent the apartment. I've seen that. Landlords trying to evict for non-payment of rent, and the court saying, no, you can't evict them. Just let them pay the money. They pay the money and you continue on. But that only goes so far. Something else that I want to say before I totally forget it. Subletting, otherwise known as Airbnb and VBRO and home away from home and all these other things.
Is that subletting?
Yes, it is.
I thought that would just be
leasing. not if I own the property, I'm renting to you.
Okay.
And then you rent it out to Becky. That is subletting.
That's big in New York.
Absolutely. If you, and I mean, it's not long-term subletting, it's short-term, but it's still subletting nonetheless. If you do not want that to go on in your property, because honestly, you totally give up control when you don't specify. Because if it's not specifically stated no subletting, then they can, and then you turn around and you say, well, I didn't tell you that you could do that. You didn't tell me that I couldn't.
See, and now I was talking to one of my boys, again, a mutual friend, about contracts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of pissed me off because I consider him pretty smart.
Mm-hmm.
And so I consider him fairly smart. And what we were reading over a contract, and I pointed something out in a contract to him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I don't like this section of this contract. I don't like what it says. I don't like what it's getting at, blah, blah, blah. So he looks at me and says, it doesn't matter anyway. I use common sense law, and the courts use common sense law too. Common sense would say that this isn't effective. And I said, it's in writing and it says what it says. So
and you're agreeing to what it says?
You're agreeing to it because you're like, common sense would say no way a court would uphold this.
Yeah. See, and that's the crazy thing about our system of justice. I can read the law, even though the law is supposed to be black and white. If I can make an argument that the law should be read as saying this, and the court buys that argument,
and that's exactly what I told him.
That's a wrap.
I told him a case can be made.
Absolutely.
Maybe not a very strong one, but case
you can
can
try
be made.
Nonetheless. And if you get a judge that on that day, the judge is like Beck, he done took an edible and he like geechee. Oh yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Be like, yeah. If you're renting to her, you can put your finger in her asshole.
You know what? Why?
So Anyway, so that's the first thing. Becky, help me out here. We're renting our house, so we
So
want to do inspections.
This is like things that you 1000% want to include. If you want to prohibit subletting, we talked about that.
Okay, no subletting.
In the state of Louisiana, city of New Orleans,
7-day rule.
and 5-day I'm talking about eviction.
No, I'm talking about a person staying at your property for more than
that. I'll get back to that. So, we have a procedure for evicting people, and you have to give them 5 days notice. Well, they can waive that in the lease. So you don't have to give them 5 days notice. If they've done something that would void the contract, or they've defaulted, say for non-payment of rent, or you have it listed in the lease that only this car and this car can park, and there's a car that's been parked there for 30 days,
right,
or whatever. And so, like I said, if they've defaulted on some clause in there, then you don't have to wait 5 days. You can go immediately to court to begin eviction proceedings. If they don't waive that 5 days,
you got to give them.
Then you have to give them 5 days.
See, and that's bullshit. Well, I'm not going to say that's bullshit. I don't know, but I'm going to say I'm going to treat anybody that's in one of my properties like they're a guest. When I say get the fuck out, get the fuck out.
See,
and
that's what
so here's another thing, going back to K-Man.
Mm-hmm.
So K-Man and his rental property. I mean, he's had this property for over a decade, so he's had multiple renters. Few times he's gone to the property to go repair something or go inspect something, and knocks on the door. Somebody answers the door, looks at K-Man and says, "Who the fuck are you?" K-Man looks at them and says, "Who the fuck are you?" And they say, "I'm the person that lives here. What do you want?" K-Man says, "I'm the one that owns this building. Who the fuck are you?" "Oh, I'm friends with such and such, and they said I can stay here, X, Y, and Z." So I know
Absolutely.
in Virginia,
and you 100% have the ability to void the contract, in the contract, but you have to evict
the new person
people who are in there.
So
That
what
is
if they
correct.
don't give you a name?
So, I mean, occupant. So you can do,
Okay.
it's like you have to evict them, because if you don't, then you can be charged damages. And sometimes it's triple. They call it treble damages. But so it's like, say you wrongfully evict these people, and there have been cases where landlords have paid like thousands of dollars because they legally evicted somebody, and so then the court fines them like the rental amount times 3.
Yo, that's what, Becky, do you remember what we were watching when it was an Airbnb, actually? So, okay, this is what happened, and we talked about it on a prior episode maybe 2 years ago. But there was a woman that was doing Airbnb, right? So the guests came, they stayed for 4 days, right? So then the guests decided, they were like, look, we're going to stay a little longer. How about we just pay you directly rather than going through Airbnb? So the owner agreed to it. So like I said, in Virginia, I know it's 30 days. Once you're at a place for 30 days, regardless of whether you pay rent there or not, you are a resident of that place. That is your address. So this lady keeps taking the money, and the people are like, "Oh, we're going to stay another week." So finally they reach whatever limit that is,
and they stop paying.
And it took her another like 2 months and another like $4,500 to, which is way more than she collected, to get these people out of her home. So I would put in a lease, and I've seen this in leases that I've signed, is you cannot have a visitor for no
Over a
more
cer-
than 7 days.
over a certain period of time. That's correct. And something else, if if the renter or the leasee tells you that it's going to be them and 3 other people, all 4 of these people need to sign the lease.
Authorized occupants, basically.
Absolutely. Like if Sheila is renting the place, but her 18-year-old son is going to live there, the son's girlfriend is going to live there, and Sheila's brother is going to also live there. And they tell you that Sheila, the son's girlfriend, and the brother all need to be on this lease, all need to sign this lease because they all need to be responsible for everything.
See, now I'll use my mama as an example. My mama's a renter, right? Every place that she's ever rented, I have signed on her lease as an authorized occupant. And no, I'm not on the lease as a leasee, I guess you would call it. But it gives me permission to be
in
there.
the place.
And
That's
then
correct.
if something happens to my mama, God forbid, and she never comes home again, I can still go in and collect her things.
Right. Well,
and
I would see, as far as authorized occupants, there's a difference. I'm saying sign the lease as a leasee.
Okay.
Because you sign as an authorized occupant, but you didn't stay there.
Right. Well, in some cases I did, but
but she is still the one who is liable
right.
for everything. But if there are 4 adults living in this place, I'm not going to allow just one of them to be liable for anything. They all need to be liable because they're going to be living there, eating there, having people over, whatever. Something else you need to put in leases are adherence to noise. This is a little slick thing. Adherences to noise ordinances.
Okay.
Because if you put in the lease about your occupant adhering to the laws surrounding, of the area that they're in, and they break the law, that means they've broken the lease, and you can get them out.
Yo, interesting.
And that, well, let me finish. That is especially helpful if you own a double.
Okay. So someone living right next door.
Right. And so you have this one tenant who's quiet and peaceful, and you have another one every day they having a rager.
Right.
So,
yo, interestingly enough, shout to Stephanie, the life architect, from the I Said No podcast. She posted, she got a Airbnb, and she posted a screenshot of some of the things that were in the Airbnb contract thing. One of them said something to the effect of no noise that you can hear outside of the premises, outside of the building. We have sound monitors outside of the building to monitor sound. If you are found in violation of this, you are evicted immediately. So I would definitely want something like that, because I hate loud neighbors, and especially in the type of neighborhoods that I've been accustomed to over the past few years. It's like quiet neighborhoods, but then you get loud neighbors, and they fuck it up for everybody. So you got some people that'll just deal with it, suck it up, and be like, yeah, those are our loud neighbors. But then you got people like me that want to literally kill them. I want them dead. So,
I don't think that's a good thing to
it's
say.
just violent, especially on live radio.
I don't give a shit, man. Like, for real.
I think there's a couple things I would want in the lease.
Okay, let's hear.
So, who is responsible for like maintenance
and
of the
repairs?
property? Like,
we are.
Well, what I'm saying is, if we say the tenant is responsible for cutting the grass.
Oh yeah.
and having, and they say that they're going to be responsible for doing that.
Right.
But yet I drive by and it looks like the house is supposed to be in foreclosure. There's nothing.
Right. Normally,
let me go. What you would do in a situation like this is, in the lease, it will say that if you are not adhering to these lawn policies, that you will hire the homeowner will hire a landscaping company,
and you add it to the cost of the
Right.
lease. You can do that, and that's vice versa as well. If the landlord is supposed to fix something and they don't, the occupant has the ability to fix it and then take it out of the rent. Now let me
I thought
say
that was like
Yeah. I
in
thought
Virginia, at least. I think that's illegal. You have to go through some escrow and do all this other shit.
well, you're supposed to. You are supposed to, like, send the landlord several notices. There's a procedure that you go through, and at the end of that, if the landlord still has not fixed it, you do have the ability to do so. Now, something else that I was going to say about maintenance and utilities, you want to specify whether or not utilities are included in the cost of the rent. And if not, you want to specify that the leasee has to have utilities to the property in their name, and they have to maintain those utilities. If the utilities get turned off, because I've written that in leases as well, if the utilities get turned off, that's a default on the lease.
That's interesting.
And
Okay.
the reason why I had a friend who owned some property, was renting it. He thought that this person had electricity. Person lived in this place for 6 months. Had electricity for 2 of those months. The other 4 months, they were stealing electricity. So they had gotten disconnected.
Technically, they had electricity, though.
Now watch. They had gotten disconnected when after they got evicted, the landlord tried to get the utility turned back on, and had like a slew of problems because this person had run up an electric bill that was like over $1,000. So they wanted the landlord to pay that in order to get it turned back on. And it's like, you think about it, utilities should not run with the property. It runs with the person responsible. So it's just a big mess. So having it specifically stated in the lease that you have to maintain utilities in your name at this property, and if you don't, it's a reason for default, is a good way to get people out who are irresponsible as far as that's concerned.
What about mandating that the tenant have renter's insurance?
That's something else. I was going to talk about insurance.
Okay, real quick, I want to go back to utilities, right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, I mentioned my mama being a renter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she was renting a house. A pipe busted in the house, under the house, and no one knew because it didn't bust enough to where there was no water. There was still water in the house. But she got
a water bill.
She got a notice on the door. The water company came out, put a notice on the door, and said, "Yo, you're using a shit ton of water. You've used like 6,000 gallons in 3 days. You might want to get some inspection done." So my mama called her landlord and said, "Yo, I got this notice that says I'm using a shit ton of water." Logged in, saw her water bill was like $700, and her water bill was typically $40.
Mm-hmm.
So landlord sends some maintenance crews out there. They couldn't find where the water, because it was underground.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, yeah, we can't find it. So it continues to rack up and rack up and rack up. So I go out one day and I'm investigating in the yard and I step in a spot and the ground sinks. So I put my hand down and it is wet as hell. So then I take like a little stick and start digging right there, and there's like a pool of water. So I'm like, Mama, I found the thing. So she called the landlord back and said, Look, you sent 2 crews out here to find this leak. Y'all couldn't find it. We found it. Boom, they dug under the house, they patched it up or whatever. So that was another $800 later. So we're looking at a $1,500 water bill. Now, in my mind, that's on the fucking owner because this
It
is
was a
your
maintenance
property.
issue.
Right.
Mhm.
Nope. Owner took no
Responsibility.
responsibility. And in the lease, it says
You're
are
responsible
for the water.
utilities. That's correct.
So then luckily the sewage and water board people were like, look, if you can show us something that there was a problem and it was repaired, we'll cut the bill, like we'll take 75% off. So she ended up paying still $400, whereas she usually pays $40.
That's correct.
So by saying your tenant is responsible for utilities, it doesn't matter if you're a property, but can the tenant, now of course we know you can sue anybody for anything.
Mm-hmm.
Can the tenant make a case that
I would.
neglect?
I would not neglect specifically, but I would I would definitely sue to get my money back because it was an issue that was covered under maintenance now. And here's how that happens. We mentioned, and Beck mentioned, cutting the grass.
Mhm.
Well, in the lease, you need to specify, as far as maintenance and repairs go, who's responsible. And most of the time, you might be responsible for grass cutting as a lessee. You might be responsible for cutting the grass. Maybe you're responsible if a window breaks, right? Maybe you're responsible for, the minor scrapes on the walls and whatever. You can do that. The landlord.
Wait, how you just gonna look at the scrape on my wall and be like, yeah, minor scrapes on the wall?
So, the landlord, because it is his property, would be responsible for the bigger things like HVAC systems
Hot
and
water,
plumbing
yeah.
and electrical. But I've seen leases where, and these are residential leases, the lessee was stupid enough to sign things like being responsible for electrical and plumbing. And that's something that you need to watch out for. You really need to look at, because
is there a difference between like a normal lease and like a lease for like a condo?
Let me
or
Mhm.
well, actually you own that,
those are
so
different.
yeah.
Those are different. There are differences.
let me jump in with one thing while it's on my mind because I forget easily. I'm like a goldfish. See, when Anne's saying she specified a residential lease where you're responsible for the electric or whatnot. You see a lot in business
Commercial.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that as
You're
a
responsible
business,
for everything.
you say you got a t-shirt shop, right? And you want to open it up in a strip mall. You go sign a lease for one of these buildings in a strip mall, one of these units. Yo, the hot water heater breaks. You
That's
have to pay
you.
for that.
That's
Roof
correct.
leak.
That's you.
You have to pay for that.
Mm.
Plumbing gets clogged up. You
You.
have to pay for that.
Correct.
Everything that happens is almost as if this is your property. And there's a term for that lease. There's
Net.
numbers.
Net.
No,
So,
it's
yeah,
triple something.
Triple net.
Triple net.
So,
Okay.
And there's a gross lease, and then there's a net lease, and that involves who's responsible for paying taxes and insurance, X, Y, and Z. Even in a gross lease, you could still be responsible for all that maintenance and repair. When you talking about gross and net, that's about who's responsible for taxes and insurance just
Gotcha.
specifically.
Okay, Becky, as you were saying, condos versus single family homes.
Right, single family unit.
Yeah. Well, and also just apartment, regular apartment complexes.
Right.
So, at one point, we were renting a unit within a condo association.
Mm-hmm.
So there's people who own their units next door
And
versus
people who rent.
and then there's people who rent.
Right.
So my question was, as a tenant, regardless if I own or lease, in that situation, from what I recall for condos, it's anything within the walls that you would be responsible for. And then you have a condo fee that goes to ground maintenance and stuff like that.
That's going to be a difference, because if you own it,
mm-hmm.
then you are responsible.
Anything
because it's yours.
Anything inside of your unit, you're responsible. Outside of your unit, you're not.
Right. If you are renting, you're not responsible for things within. You shouldn't be. The only thing you should be responsible is utilities, if utilities are not included.
Right.
Everything else, maintenance, that should be the owners, because you're just a renter. And you mentioned insurance.
Mm-hmm.
Renter's insurance.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So,
do you know how many times leases we've come across that require you to get renter's insurance?
And I was about to
say, we never did.
And you should.
Well, at the time, we were self-insured.
Right.
Because we ain't really have shit.
Right. But I mean, I honestly urge people to get renter's insurance. And a lot of people, they saw with Hurricane Katrina, like, why renter's insurance was a very good thing. And people find out, like, when buildings burn, why renter's insurance. Because if you look at leases do cover insurance. And they always say the landlord has insurance for his property, not yours, and
there's a name for that too, because we actually got, when we first bought this house, we got the type of insurance that a landlord would get, because there's different types of insurances as far as being an owner occupant and being a landlord. There's a name for it. I can't think of it, but basically what it does is it covers the bare minimum. It covers the structure itself.
Right. Not contents.
Right. It doesn't cover contents. It doesn't cover, there's a few
someone
other
slips
things.
And falls.
Right.
Right.
So we got that. Did we get that? I think we got that just so we can shop around.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know why I just said that.
Wait, I'm glad that you brought that up. That is something else. So in some of these residential leases, so peep game on this, people. In some of these residential leases, you are responsible if someone that you've invited on the property, something happens to them. And some of these leases, and you might want to consider putting one in your lease, there's something called an indemnification clause. So if someone is invited onto the property, you've invited, so your invitees, your guests, if they are walking across the floor and say that it's a wood floor, and one of the
it's uneven.
The slats are up, and they trip and they fall, they break their arm, or they break their leg, they break their nose, whatever, they're damaged. Well, typically in a situation like that, the person who owns the home would be the person that would actually have the liability, because they're the ones who should
maintain the floor so there's no
nothing that would actually injure or harm someone.
But the indemnification waives that.
Right. So basically what indemnification does is it says, if something like that happens, you are going to cover me. You're going to cover my back. if someone sues me, you in turn are going to jump in and cover whatever, to break it down to the bare bones.
Man.
You slide in my place, you're going to accept responsibility and you're going to pay the cost. So
even if it may have been my fault by way of not maintaining
now,
my property.
That is, I was going to get to that. So in those indemnification clauses, there are sentences in there that says if the landlord's negligence is the cause of whatever. So like you said, if I'm supposed to be maintaining the outside of the home, if I'm supposed to be maintaining the floors of the home, and if I'm supposed to be maintaining other things, and if you've told me, you sent me letters saying there's damage to the floor, this thing, and you keep telling me and I keep saying, okay, I'm coming to do it, then that's a totally different issue. But that's something to be aware of, people who are renting, and that's something for landlords to maybe include, because it's honestly, in those cases, you can't control who's coming in and out the home, right? And do you really want to be on the hook?
Can you?
For someone's damage?
I want to control. Okay, so here's another thing. So far, ladies and gentlemen, if you're still with us, we're building my lease. Becky and I are renting out our place. We have starting with everyone must sign the lease. Everyone's responsible for the utilities. They're responsible for.
Well, let me say, everyone of legal age is going to sign this lease.
Okay. And they're responsible for maintenance, yard work and things like that.
Insurance.
They need renter's insurance. They cannot sublease. They cannot have a guest stay at the house longer than 7 days or whatever. Right. And I also want to limit the number of people that could be in my unit at any given time.
And I do recall signing some leases
that said that.
No, not living there, but I'm talking about visiting.
See, that's why you're gonna run into some problems.
Okay, so I can't say I don't want 10 people inside. No parties. Okay, like this is the thing. I don't want any parties in my property or on my property or around my property. Right. Fuck my next door neighbors. But like
I said, that's where you may run into some issues, because I am paying you for the use of this home. There are some things that you can tell me you can prohibit. Like, you can prohibit me from running a business outside of this home.
Okay.
You can do that. You can prohibit the number of people who occupy this home for longer than a certain period of time. You cannot restrict like that. Basically, I can't have a Christmas party in a house that I'm renting.
Psh, not in my house.
See, I don't. As long as I am not breaking the law as far as noise ordinances.
Oh yeah, we got the noise ordinance in the lease too.
And stuff like that, then I should be good. Now, if it's something like an Airbnb, I can tell you in most Airbnbs, they limit the number of people that can occupy the space for however long you're renting it. Okay. They do that. But that's short-term rentals.
Right.
And they have the ability to do that. Somebody who's in a long-term lease contract,
I can't say.
You kind of limited no parties.
No parties. I don't want no parties at my house.
Yeah, well, that's really restrictive, and you would probably have. Now you can put it in there, but that's probably something that would be like kicked out in court.
And that's like my homeboy would say, common sense. But but I can also keep piling the clauses on to where if you do have a party, I can kick you out for something else.
Like
noise or let's say
Creating a fire hazard.
too many cars on the property. Man,
you stretching. Like I said, you can honestly, like we say all the time, you can sue for anything you want. You can put lots of things in there. Something else that you want to put in there, because Dan is an asshole
mediation.
and he doesn't want people to have parties in his house. You want to put in a clause that basically says that should the courts find any clause illegal, it does not invalidate
the
whole
rest of the agreement is still
right.
Yeah.
So you definitely want to put something like that. A severability clause is what it's called.
Yeah.
So
I read one of them recently.
So basically it says if a court of law would find that one clause is illegal, the whole
rest remains.
Right. The whole agreement is not rendered illegal.
Okay.
You want to put that in there. If you don't have that in there, you run the risk of the whole thing be thrown out.
So I think we got all of our bases covered, Becky. Anything else you can think of?
Like what?
Like appliances and stuff. I guess we're responsible for that unless the misuse.
Honestly,
wait.
You can rent a space without.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
You can't do that. But here's the thing that and this is a clue or a tip for both the renter and the landlord. Have an inspection list. When you initially walk into this place, check, like I have put together for people a list of things that's in the home or in the space, and you check it, and then you actually write the condition, and then the landlord and the renter signs it, acknowledging on this date, this is what was in here and this is the condition. When they leave, you pull that inspection list out, you look to make sure, and take pictures. I tell people who rent all the time, when you walk into this place, take pictures, dated pictures.
That's exactly how we got our carpet replaced. You remember? When someone in the laundry room, the prior tenant spilled bleach on the carpet, and we marked it down on the checklist when we walked through. Mm-hmm. But I think the way that they were looking at it is, just regular wear and tear. No, that's
not wear and tear.
They spilled bleach. So then we sent them pictures, and it was like, oh shit, we didn't realize they spilled bleach. So they came and replaced our carpet.
Exactly. So you take pictures as the renter. You take pictures of the home, like all the major thoroughfares, the walls, all of it. Landlord too. So in the end, because I had somebody that came to me and they wanted me to sue their landlord because the landlord did not return their deposit, their security deposit. And the reason why the landlord did not return the security deposit is because the tenant had complained about bed bugs. And the tenant wanted the landlord to spray. Landlord did not spray. Tenant complained. Tenant was actually on a housing voucher program.
Okay.
So they complained to the program, sent pictures. The landlord kicked the tenant out, but refused to return the security deposit because the landlord said that she had damaged the unit. Thing is, according to her, she left the place pristine, but the landlord said that she left the place dirty and it was pristine. And my first question was, do you have pictures? She did not. So it's like, how are you going to prove that what is in this landlord's pictures
And the
was not done
landlord
by
can,
you.
go trash the place and say, look. So two things I want to wrap up here because we're kind of running over as usual. But first being, I see at least my time in New Orleans. I don't know about back home in DC and Virginia and Maryland, but your deposit is typically equal to your rent.
Right.
So if you're renting a place that costs $1,700 a month, which down here these days is not outrageous. 10, 15 years ago, you'd be living in a mansion, but your deposit is going to be $1,700. Also, you need to pay first and last month's rent. So that's going to be $1,700. What's 1,700 times 3, Becky? Come on. We're on camera.
You can do it.
I'm not on camera.
Come on. You're holding the show up.
It is 43, 41.
Jesus Christ.
Wait. You ready? You said 17 times 3, right?
40.
0, 0,
1.
1, 5.
Oh, okay.
So
1,500.
Jeez.
5,
5,
1, 0.
0.
Wait, and she's still skeptical. She was like, she's like, wait.
I don't
Wait.
think that's right.
She's like, wait.
51.
There you go.
5100, right?
You didn't say a decimal. So I'm thinking 5,100.
It is.
Oh, 1,700.
Help me. Somebody. This is what I have to live with, y'all.
That girl
Just
said,
don't give me math and you'll be fine.
that girl said, you didn't say a decimal.
So what would the decimal have changed?
Whether it was $5,100
Or 5,100?
no, or $51. Because
in spite of the fact that he said
$1,700?
it's $1,700.
I forgot the 100 part, okay? Because I was because I knew it would be 0, 0 at the end. So I was just focusing on the 17 times 3.
And the decimal placement.
And I forgot about that it was thousands.
That girl said 51. And then it was like
15.
Wait, I don't think that's right.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, this has been another.
I think I'm going to leave it at
No,
that.
this has been another coked up, cracked up, tanked up edition of Black Law and Legal Lies.
Edible edition.
Sponsored by Retarded Tit Becky.
Man.
We'll fill you in on that one next week.
I was going to just get into the whole pet things, but I just want to leave it right here. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another episode of Black Law and Legal Lies. And of course, if you have any questions, honestly, about renting your place or even being a renter,
right?
Hit us up. We answer questions. I answer questions all the time. Shit. You can keep up with us on all social media at Black Law Podcast. You can also keep up with me on Twitter and IG at I am Dan on Drugs.
And this is Afro Becky, despite my new name.
Retarded Titty Becky.
And thank you for joining us for today.
RTB.
Yes, and my name is Just Dan, and you can follow me on Twitter at I Tell Legal Lies.
See, and this is why we can't rent shit out, because this girl will be like, okay, sir, that'll be $51. What the fuck is you doing?